Just in case anybody was not aware of it. Okay, yeah, I think we have almost, we have few people online, but that's all right. We'll record it and we can put this up on the blog. This is the, for those watching the recording, this is the Mapping Ancient Africa workshop in Rome. Woo! And so this is day 2 of the workshop. And now we're going to report back to the wider community and show off what the different groups have been doing. So the first part is going to be going through the different groups. We've got 2 sets of slides. So I'm going to invite you to come up here, talking to the microphone in just a few moments and show us those slides. Then we will go through the plans for the Quaternary International special issue. And I know Steffi's all ready to tell us all about that. She's ignoring me. And our plans of our SWOT analysis and the future of mapping ancient Africa. We'll go through that with everybody. And then we can think about timescales and what we want to do after that. And there's a reminder that we have a session in the heat at the INCO meeting next week. So which group wants to start with presenting their outputs? Marcus or... Yeah. So do you want these?
No, the one Gemma did.
Do you want these slides?
Yeah.
Okay. Sharing screen. So over to Manu Chevalier for the outputs of group number Chevalier.
It's not my group, it's Gemma's group. No, yeah, so we decided to work on, we had that kind of little project to extract the pastclim simulations from that. Is the mouse visible? Yes. So, sorry, let's start first. I created that temperature reconstruction from that marine core some years ago. It covers almost the past 800,000 years long, and we thought that would be a good case study to test the long-term climate simulations that are available in pastclim. So the pollen records is assumed to represent a region that covers like the Limpopo Basin and a few of the coastal rivers as well. So we kind of extracted the pastclim data for a rectangle region encompassing the catchment. What's happening?
It's broadcasting the presenter view.
Oh.
We haven't got a best. Where's the next?
Okay. I won't start over. So yeah, so we just compared we extracted the mean annual temperature and annual precipitation simulations from that region, which looked like that: temperature on top and precipitation at the bottom. The yellow shading represents plus or minus standard deviation of temperature within each, like for each timeline, like all the standard deviation of the temperature within the box, just some form of uncertainties. And we have the precipitation here that looks a lot like the summer insolation curve at those latitudes. And comparing with the temperature reconstructions, which is in blue here, you'll note the very good choice of colors that we made. But take-home message is that the blue curve is well within the orange shading. So we have a pretty good match with the glacial interglacial cycles. We did not center or rescale anything. So the temperature values are absolute temperatures. So we have a pretty good match with like 20 plus during present day down to like 3 to 4 degrees cooler during glacial periods. So that's pretty nice. And we don't have precipitation reconstruction from that side because the pollen is probably not so good for that type of variable. But yeah, we have some doubts that it would look just like that insolation curve. So yeah, something interesting to look at and work on into the next years, weeks, months, something. Cool. Yeah, that's all we have.
Great. So, question, I know,
For the group.
for the group.
Sure. Maybe you want to come here for the online people?
Thanks, Mana. Just saying, I want to understand or point out. If I use this cursor here, you watch when the temperature goes up, you've kind of almost got a stepwise up, and then it drops. You got a stepwise up, and it drops.
Yeah, you reverse time, but yeah, it's kind of the idea.
Yes. So why is it like that? Why is it in one direction? It's going, not gradually up, but there's kind of a there's a it sort of goes up. And then it drops off, and it goes up, and it drops off. So one side of the curve, it's very kind of stepwise and so slow increment. And then when it drops, it's relatively quick. And that occurs all the way back. There's a great example there. You look there, it's going up and up and up and up, and then bang. Not as clear there, but certainly clear there, certainly clear there.
In the ice cores as well, like the glaciations are like super abrupt, and the glacial inception is more gradual. Yeah.
Each time.
I mean, why is that? It's slightly beyond my expertise, but yeah, I mean that's something that is, I guess, a correct feature of the models. That even the CO2 does that as well. It's just that yeah, I mean when you deglaciate, you just like go full on into interglacial and.
The answer. I mean, just saying it's dynamic. Just saying the build-up is slower, so the accumulation is slower, but then when you get to the tipping point, it's gone. But if you're complicated calculations.
Any other question? Will, anything online or if you want to ask a question, please turn on your microphone. Do we have sound here? So maybe not.
The reconstructed installation methods, or you have it.
Simulated is the word.
That's
Yes, as Brian highlighted, this is a pure insolation driven rainfall simulation.
And no thoughts.
As far as I know, not.
So if you go back to the comparison, it's pretty good, right?
It's a pretty decent fit. And
yeah,
I mean, especially since we didn't have to center the curves or anything, like they have the similar range. We kind of knew when we did the reconstruction that our amplitude was a bit weak. We were expecting a bit more than, I think we got 3.5, but I think expectation would be a bit higher. So it was a limit of the calibration data that we used. So I guess in that case, the simulation is probably a better representation of the thermal amplitude than the reconstructions. But the reconstructions is really well within the 1 sigma of the temperature variability within that box. Yeah, it's quite impressive, actually. Like
well, but yeah, it's temperature.
Yes.
It's pretty easy to basically. There's not much based on the gradient, temperature gradients, generally function, avoiding things like uplift and things like that. There is a pretty standard global evolution. It's a whole lot like it's a whole lot like this.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I mean,
it makes sense.
It makes sense that the patterns are similar. Because I think now climate models are really, as you said, as Brian said, the drivers of temperatures are well constrained, and especially when you look at these like broad spatial and temporal scales. The fact that the values are like really like the amplitude is quite correct, and that you know, like the modern values around 20 for such a broad region. I think that's still quite a interesting and positive results. That the trends are similar, that's kind of expected. The fact that the reconstruction fits exactly within that envelope, I'd say that's still, I mean, not you know, it's a good positive results. You know, it could have well been shifted by a few degrees and we wouldn't have been that surprised. So I think that's
The blue line is picking up less of the variability from the dark line.
I think we're really like limited by the pollen, and we are really struggling to get like in the coldest speeds. Like you can see the LDM, we're really missing like that final degree of cooling, and because otherwise the variability is every time the climate seems to be like above 17 degrees, the variability seems rather similar.
Yeah.
I mean, and the simulation does a slightly better temporal resolution as well. So you know, especially like the second half of the record, the pollen resolution is quite low. So you're seeing a less variability there because of the resolution. So that's a, yeah.
Moving away from the actual input system, but one of the beauty things that we did with DNS is because we get the wrong thing, we get much more perception technology, and so I think it's very much also the issue. I think what that shows is how basically what the input system should look like, and every record we use and interpret it in terms of position that doesn't.
Because the ones that we have that are based on, you know, whatever stabilized stuff.
No,
From Southern Africa, they're very much not recession.
Yes.
And so looking, and I don't think that in a lot of this temperature inputs on something like delta V is not it's really with the inverted pattern. And you have anti-phase relationship with recession, which would certainly follow that trend.
It's 14:45.
I think it's a matter of delta data still holds the role to the second one of the exponential maximum. If the record is low enough, I
This
expect it to do that.
This is more in the when exponential speed is low, so speed is kind of last 50,000.
Yeah.
Type of stuff.
Yeah.
When under exponential speed, when you have very strong forcing, that does play more. But it's yeah, it's really like the last 50,000 years. There are
It's said that really sufficient, but I think it's not is prolonged. This model in output would suggest maybe not necessarily just that, but rather a mixed signal that maybe is driven a lot by temperature instead for whatever reason. So, and I think in that way, it could be a really nice way of verifying approaches, because one of the most common approaches is using dust records. And I can name a couple of them that look like the Raymond. So, and dust is usually like equals precipitation, so maybe it's not.
Sorry, dust can be precipitation.
I know, but we use it that, so, but it could be a nice way to verify something like or regular.
Yes, we agree.
that's the end of the discussion.
Perfect. Okay. Other questions from other people? Anybody online with a question?
Well, perhaps you've probably been discussing this the whole time in the room, but I can't hear that discussion. So I was just wondering if Will or anybody wanted to comment on how much the simulation does look like the ice core record and not something rather different, which I think don't we expect in the tropics, that something a bit less like an ice sheet, with slow build up of ice sheet and then a rapid warming out of it, as was mentioned in the first comment.
I think this is a Manu. Manu can explain the position of this site and why it has this signal.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we can go back to the first slide with the mouse here. So it's really like, you know, there's a very good correlation with what's happening in the Indian Ocean as well, which is really connected to the, well, everything that's happening in the south and the Antarctica and stuff like that. So that's probably how the signal is propagated, and it's such a pure glacial interglacial signal.
Right. So you're quite a long way from the equatorial belt anyway, actually.
Yeah.
And very, very oceanic.
Yeah, there's strong oceanic
Okay.
relation there, because you have the Agulhas current flowing down there, and it's really like strongly impacting there.
Mm. So probably quite different from somewhere much further north in Africa, say, in the rainforest belt.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Trevor.
Running again.
Yeah. Neil, can you hear with this roving mic? Does this?
I can hear that. Yeah, that's very loud. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Mm.
Mona, how far is that record off the coastline? Because when you're sitting there, you've got a massive catchment coming in there. So you've got a big influence from that riverine system, but you've also got the strong current coming down as well. So there's quite a lot of complexity there in terms of the signal. Both you've got sediment and stuff coming down the coastline there, but you've also got coming out. I mean, when that place floods, that impact is well offshore. I'm just wondering if there's any way that can influence what that marine record is showing, or whether your results pick up any kind of a mess in the signal because of where that site actually is.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly how these things are, but I also remember like there's like a, you call that like a retrocurrent kind of, you know, the Agulhas going down and there's something coming back up, and it's kind of in the middle of that. But to be honest, I'm really not an expert in these things. They're just following like the original publication, like how they were describing stuff, and it's really.
Yeah, I'm just
And the
asking.
pollen attacks that are really.
Because you know that the Marram crowd, they went and they caught all the way down along the southern coastline, and off of every single river mouth, the core is just an absolute mess at the top, you know, because you've got that influence of the damming up or the rivers flooding down and things like that. But that was a lot closer to shore, I think, than where you're sitting there. I just wonder whether in the record itself, some of the issues may be due to a major events or the currents itself coming down the coastline.
Because I think there's still some kind of a plateau, like it's not like the pure Agulhas current yet. It's still like before that. So but it's still quite deep.
Okay.
I don't remember the depths or anything, but it's not like just coastal, and it's not like the pure ocean either. So it's kind of in between. So there's probably like a bit of influence, but I think most of the pollen you get are like a really like that integrated version of like all these rivers coming in the region.
Perfect.
And yeah, especially since because you're like that bit of like that current, like all these rivers, they're not on the plot here, but they're probably like, you know, these regions also influencing a little bit of the pollen. Yeah.
Is there a particle size record or anything, or where you can actually?
I couldn't hear.
Sorry, is there a particle size record or anything that you can see in the or an optical record of the core that distinguishes when it might show, you know, big outflows? I
do not remember. There's a bunch of stuff. Brian, do you remember? Yeah, it's like DuPont paper, Climate of the Past 2019, 2019 and 2011 as well, 2 papers. They really describe many of the sedimentological properties that are there. I don't remember them like from the back of my head, so sorry.
Fine.
Okay, any other questions for Manu or this group? In which case, we'll switch over. Thank you very much, Manu. Team Manu. Team Gemma. Yeah. Okay, who is It's Team Trevor. Team Trevor off the sofa to present.
Thank you very much. Yeah, our group, we got very distracted yesterday. I can't believe it's 24 hours and we've eventually come up with some results. We changed direction, changed ideas, you know, the usual story with putting papers together. And eventually we came, I think we followed, Will, it was your sort of fifth objective or fifth point along looking at the African humid time period. And so we started playing around with pastclim and seeing what we could do and see what we could pull out. And really it was just an exercise to learn how to use the package more than anything else. I'll be blunt. That's how we started out. We didn't start it with the research questions, but we started out trying to find out how to use these data sets. What could we pull out of them? So it was more that type of training exercise more than anything else. And then I think we got quite an interesting sort of result coming out. And what we've got here is we've taken the 1,000-year time slice, gone from today, gone back just the first 20,000 years. And we used a single data set. We used the Bayer 2020 data set. And we pulled out eventually Bio 12, which was precipitation. And we tried other ones. We tried the aridity, we tried temperature, and they show very similar kind of patterns. But this one we think best shows what we're trying to get across. And that what we then did is we took the, let's see if I can get this right, from the, say, for example, the 20,000 years ago, we took that away from modern and then 19,000 away from modern. And we tried to see where it was wetter or drier than it is today, if that makes sense. So in other words, 20,000 years ago, where is it wetter or where is it drier than it is at present? And it's just some nice patterns, some interesting patterns which come out. I mean, just look at this. I mean, the first thing that stands out is look at the last 4,000 years. You've got a lot less wetter or drier, so more or less more similar than today. I'm not saying that means stability, but it means there's something going on there. Look at that bout across the Sahel, where for the last 20,000 years, going up to 4,000 years ago, it is generally wetter. Look what's going on down in sort of southeast of Africa, where it is wetter. And then you've got this switch happening. And I've got to try and work out where that switch is now. If you look at about 13, 12, I can't see it now just looking at the screen, but you go all the way down to about 16,000. Yeah, that's wetter here. And then look directly above at 12,000. You've got that shift to what was wetter than present now, and it's drier than present. Have a look down south, over here, in the southern area, where it is constantly drier than it is at present. And we're just beginning. Thank you. We're just beginning, but I just think there's a story we can tell here. If we're looking to put something together, I don't know where it's going to go yet. I don't know how well it reflects the African humid period. I also think we need to go further back and go look at the earlier periods of African humidity. We need to better define what we mean by the humidity, but playing around with this, and then the next step, kind of drop on some of the long-term marine and terrestrial cores and look when they identify when the start of that African humid period is. I just think it could make quite a nice story. And that's about as far as we've got at this stage. But it's just playing with the data that we were exposed to yesterday and just start looking at it and just start trying to ask these questions around what is going on. What can we see at 1,000-year time slice? Is this useful to us? So there's a lot more we're going to do. And what I'd like to do at the end of this meeting is I'm going to just start a document going about what we've done, what type of questions we like to ask. And then as a group, we'd like to try and follow this up and see if we can build this into a paper. So we really started from scratch. You know, we're not coming in with our own data sets. We actually just started playing with what we were given yesterday. And we think we've got an interesting story that could be told here with a bit of work. Thanks. We're not finished yet. There's part 2 about to come up. Well, maybe questions first before Marcus moves on. We had a bit of a spin-off onto something else as well.
That's right. That's right for evaluation. I mean, for me, that's a, you know, it's a great starting point. But in terms of, what was the point of you coming over here?
Well, there's a couple of responses to that, but as we're live, I'm going to keep them to myself.
No, I think this is a good, I mean, it's a great basis for evaluation. I can just see plenty of places where the proxy records show something very different. So I'd say the next step from this is to bin the data, in such a way that they are comparable, and then really look at how the geological data fits or does not with this to move forward. So I mean, it's a great first step.
Well, you know, I mean, you weren't here yesterday, but, you know, for us for myself, never being exposed to this data, we put this together and then realized, you know, stupid things like the legends are different, you know, then getting that right. And also a completely different pattern that you're picking up. And so we are really just starting from the basics. But I already visualize us having a table, going and bringing up the papers from the Marine Corps and the terrestrial corps, seeing when they're picking up the African humid, what proxy they're using for it, and then just comparing it to what is being picked up in these data layers.
Yeah, the Shanahan paper from 2015 does.
Yes, that was really our starting point. Yeah.
Any other question online?
So I think it would be super interesting to add to this, because we can get biome outputs as well, right? And so in the first instance, they look like they weren't doing very much, but it might be interesting just to maybe split that into woody versus grassy or something quite simple, and just see how that tracks this change or not. Because then we can compare that with the pollen records at various locations, and
also if it tracks it for different areas. So in other words, it may track it very well for East Africa, but not well in Southern Africa, or you know. So I think those kinds of regional variabilities will come through.
Yeah, because I suspect there's geographic locations where the model works well, and there's geographic locations where the model might not work so well. And I think that's important to be able to identify those. So I think that's one of the real advantages of this.
Yeah, I see it more as ending up being quite a descriptive paper, sort of just describing using the data sets that are available and what it actually does show and what we can pick up from it. It's not to critique it really, but it's just to show the utilization of it as an example, as a case study. And we were talking earlier that if this doesn't work, then there is still the opportunity within the framework of the special issue to have a review. And this could be used as a case study that could inform that review of using pastclim data.
Yeah, but I think, I mean, just testing the model in this way and as Brian said, validating it against some key points around the continent would be just useful in itself.
Yeah.
Michaela may want to say something about that.
So I have to say, as I said before, I'm not the producer of the data, so my paleoclimatic expertise doesn't go very deep, but of course it's important that so we are perfectly aware that those are models that are not really capturing the whole reality of every single point, and we are aware of that, and we are already working to make them better. Actually, my colleagues are working to make them better.
Honestly.
But of course, it's really important for us to see them in real life. So I think it's important for us to see how those models compare with the data you see in the field, you see from the analysis from different proxies, because some proxies have been used to test those models, but some others have not. And of course, there may be some regional changes that we are not considering. So of course, those models are made to be as good as they can be, but they have limitation. If we are able to point out some of these limitations and work to make them better, we are very happy. And so we were discussing before about the possibility of an ongoing conversation on that. And honestly, I'm really, really interested in the work you have been doing in these past 2 days, because it's great to see when things work, when they don't. And as I was saying yesterday, I keep saying that today, it would be great if you're doing some work today, and if you don't want to put that into a paper, I would be super interested in including it in a kind of a review of how those models perform in Africa for the special issues. So, I mean, if you don't have a paper out of your work, we will have one. So you will be a co-author in this paper, and we can present a few a few examples, and also we can produce others. And then maybe we can think about a different paper to discuss what is needed to do and maybe start working towards that. Personally, I'm very open for that. I'm not the person dealing with the climate data, but I'm sure the PI I'm working with, Andrea Manica, will be open with that. So we have been having this conversation a lot, and we are very happy to see how things are working in real life, in the field, and in real data.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Marcus, would you like? So we then had a bit of a spin-off and went in different directions.
Perfect.
But,
Well, so the proxy model comparison was also like the starting point for the other things we had been doing. So it was about to get an aridity index or the hydroclimate out of the model to make it comparable, for example, with the Chubahara record, where we have only an aridity index and not some pollen or anything. And so what you can see here is the temperature or the monthly temperatures from the pastclim data set and the precipitation. And out of the monthly temperature and the latitude, we can calculate the potential evaporation and do some water balance for each side. We can calculate and translate or use this as an aridity index that we then can compare. And this looks now a little bit more like the hydroclimate in the region. In the first step for the model comparison, it does not match with the proxy. So it was like totally okay. It does not tell the same story for white parts. But nevertheless, it's a good starting point. And when we increase also for now, it's just only on the side of Chubahar. So we need to increase the extent of the area for the catchment. And so that's the one thing we aim for. And the second thing is also that the pastclim data set is an awesome 3-dimensional spatio-temporal data cube. And especially in the search for like clusters or spatio-temporal networks of humidity, of aridity, of where also might be isolated areas of humid conditions somewhere within the spatio-temporal data cube would be for interest, and that what we're aiming for. Yeah, that was the second part. Any questions?
Questions? Thoughts? So just what area did you, so this is basically taking a point in the pastclim thing and then drilling rather than creating a map, you're drilling vertically through to what area did you take to represent Chuba here? Like how?
Yes, that's right now very, very small area. We need to, that's not the extent is not covering the whole catchment.
Okay.
That could make the proxy model difference for now. But also when we looked at the maps before, it was Chubahar was not, or southern Ethiopia was not really wet during the African humid period. So this is quite confusing for long time periods. Where we know we have shorelines there, we have lakes, we have humid conditions.
Yeah.
And
Other thoughts, other questions?
No, just Brian and I were just discussing about the deriving the potential evaporation from these temperature curves. There's potential for that as well, because as you said, many proxies, they are not proxies for rainfall, they're proxies for like water availability, humidity, however you want to call that. So there's that. Obviously, the vegetation, the transpiration part of the vegetation is not included there. Not a critique, just that's why we're talking like whispering together. But yeah, that's kind of interesting and I guess getting closer to what is recorded by many proxies, including vegetation.
Mhm, mhm. And that's like a very basic evaporation approach. There are more complex ones, and I don't know, we have not explored all parameters in the pastclim data set. We can look what we can use more to get better estimates, using also the vegetation, the cloud cover, the wind speed, etc.
What really brought this on is it says it's getting wetter, but we know from the record it's not. It's getting drier. So the proxy says it's getting drier, but this output is saying it's getting wetter from the previous slide. So we're thinking, well, okay, so there's got to be something we can say about this. Is we've got to look at this, and we don't want to jump, oh, well, the model's wrong, or this is wrong, or the proxy's not useful. So the idea now is to actually just, can we not focus on that area, just that 1 pixel, and drill down and go backwards through time and see if that is different. But then also by almost combining the layers together, find a way of putting a ratio together and seeing if that's coming out any different. We know from the proxy it should be drier or it should be wetter, but that's not showing that. So we're just trying to almost expand upon the previous idea.
Okay, thank you. Any more? Okay,
One more?
final
One
bit.
more take from our group.
Okay, one more take for this group. That's great.
Okay, so for my research, I was analyzing charcoal from the Van der Wijk cave, which is located in the southern Kalahari. So what I did was I wanted to know the paleovegetation and paleoclimate of the Van der Wijk cave between 2,300 years ago, between 2,300 and 500 years ago. So what I did was I analyzed macro charcoal, and I mostly identified species that are dry environment tolerant, and only 2 species were typically found in wet environment. I identified 13 species, and here I've illustrated the charcoal of Diospirus austroafricanus. They're from A to C, and then D to F. That's Taconianthus parvicapitalis. Then G to I, that's Ziziphus mucronata charcoal. And interestingly, the charcoal data is also in agreement with what we found in the pastclim reconstruction. Yeah, it also indicates that the environment was dry, almost similar to today. So thank you.
Cool. So a really nice, like, kind of paleo data validation of the pastclim outputs, even over that short time period.
Yeah.
Nice. Any questions, thoughts? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so I think that is all the outputs from the different groups. I don't think there's anything I can present on that point of view. So you have? Okay, go for it. We have more. There's more. It's not over. Okay. Okay, I thought you were going to jump us straight onto the QI stuff, but not yet. It's not over till it's over. So
Well, you said I should put something together.
that would be great. Doesn't mean you have to do it.
It's really quick and short anyways. All
Beautiful.
right. Okay.
Okay, Stephanie.
Okay, so our group was trying to look at the concept or the hypothesis that you have these dominant shifts throughout the last 500,000 years that we related to paleo variability. And within the paper, based on data that was available from the continent and from the marine coast offshore, we analyzed them, and then we came up with an east-west shifting pattern that was related to certain phases. And what we wanted to do is use pastclim to check if we can squeeze out of the model a pattern that looks anywhere similar to what we got from the proxy data. So it was just a verification of what the proxy data indicated and to see if pastclim can capture it. The thing with pastclim is that at the moment it cannot integrate over time. So it can make these time slices one by one, but it cannot integrate over the time periods that we needed. So Michaela was kind enough to write us a loop that automatically filters out annual precipitation and then integrates it over the time slices that we set based on the paper and just produce that. So what we did is, and this is the output that we just wanted to quickly show you on the next page, is a difference between the oldest and the middle phase. So one of these two phases in the middle basically subtracted from each other. An easier way to show it, because the idea would be that the site that we looked at changed differently. So because one side is supposed to be wet and then turn to dry, and the other one is supposed to be dry and then turn wet. So you should get a different sign for the different regions that should roughly follow a east-west trending pattern, theoretically. So what we did is, these are not sites because there are lakes or anything that we can use from a paleoclimatology point of view. These are just positions on the continent because the models everywhere. So we're not limited to a paleoclimatic site, so we could just pick cities to get a data point, because we cannot create a map since pastclim cannot integrate. So we just have to do position-wise. So we just went with some random cities to look for. And what's interesting is, even so it's really preliminary stuff, is you have here this East African wedge thing with values that go on one side of the scale. And then you have the West African stuff that for most part goes the other side of the scale. So you have that east-west shift that you would predict when you're subtracting one period from the other. So if one period starts off with wetter values, then the next you're getting a negative value, and if it's vice versa, you would get a positive value. And that's basically what this tracing. So it seems that this east-west trending stuff is within the model, but it's much more complex, of course, than the initial hypotheses by far. And you could somehow also see it a little bit in the 20,000 year model thing that they did. You could see this wedge, this wet East African wedge contrasting a really drier South and Western Africa. So that pattern, to some extent, is exactly what you see here, even though you only have a few data points. So what we will try to do is just randomly add more locations, just to get a better spatial coverage, to see if this holds up or if it just gets really colorful, because it's much more complex than what we think. So that's basically what the group has managed to put together. Okay. Move on to this. Like, is there any questions?
Any questions for Stephanie? Questions, thoughts, comments online?
I think Trevor's raising his hand.
Trevor.
Just like, what about another way of showing this? So just thinking about what you're talking. So what you've got there is you've taken points, but it's not point data. You've got a coverage for the whole of Africa.
Well, the thing is, this is actually point data in terms of we selected the maps you got out. We cannot produce for this because it can't integrate. What we can do is select as many locations as we can.
Yeah.
Have it individually calculated,
yeah.
And then do the difference.
It just seems such a long way around to doing it. And I was trying to think, is there not a way? I think they're called heat maps today, or like a chloropeth map. And what you could almost see then is if you have you also have a color gradation.
Yes, exactly. But that would require more data. So what we could do is put more data, spot on it, and then just maybe change the way it's plotted to create it, but it can't automatically do it at the moment.
Yeah.
This is not what pastclim was built for now.
No, I know. But I mean, you particularly use this graphic. It's got to create a wedge shape coming down there.
No, I agree. And it should be better visualized, but this is the best I could do.
No, I'm just thinking that would look really nice then, that would really visually show that change if it was possible.
Yeah, sure.
So I was working on some code, is really rough, but I can share with you some code to make average of maps. so a map that is an average of many maps in many different times. So I can send it to you to Slack. And if it's helpful, you can use that for the moment, and then we can find a better and more elegant way.
It's really not a problem.
to-
Like this way works for now because it's starting to kind of like point to the fact that there is this wedge, like east center wedge that is also in the actual data from the last 20,000 years. So it's kind of like popping up in a similar fashion. So it's just a matter of how to visualize it the best. So I think it's in the model. So, but it needs to be tested more, of course. So I'm happy to use any code to make this easier to see, but I feel like it's there, my personal point of view.
Okay, yeah, I mean, just sort of, you could do it with these points if you just sort of gridded the points across the whole of Africa.
Yes.
Like you just line them up or something like that.
Yes. It
Could be a fun way to do
exactly.
it.
So it would be, because then
More
you could-
systematic than
exactly, and then you could do, like, we just started out by trying out some locations.
interesting
to see if
places.
it works,
Does anything come up?
basically, and to just put a point on the map. That's all we did. So I understand that is by far not as sophisticated from an approach that it might could have been. Sure.
Manu?
Yeah, I just have a quick comment because maybe I just missed it because I was just chatting with Brian, but your color scale here is not really centered on 0. So your kind of dipole
Yes, it's
is,
a
you
point.
have actually very few dots that are positive and most of them are negative actually.
Yes, but that's why we have a substantial amount of positions in one region, which would be East Africa, and they all react the same way in terms between the difference in their annual precipitation from one phase to the other. So they all react the same, so they all create the same values. But that's a data coverage issue. If you put more more points on the other side where you have the dark blue dots, it's going to be more data points, and this is just an interpretation that either the periods are not that much different, or that the one is so much different that you get the negative value. So this going from positive to negative values is actually what I would expect if you have really a SWIP swap across Africa to some extent.
Yeah, it's true, but you also mentioned like that east-west opposition, and that is not really what the data show. They're almost on the same side, and you have like these West African, like really dark blue dots that are opposing all.
Yeah,
right?
no, that is true. Like you only have these 1, 2, 3, like these 6.
Yeah, I mean, I
dark-
understand the data coverage, but yeah, I think the color scale, or maybe that's just, I just expected, I was just looking at, blue positive, red negative, and I just forgot to look at the color scale, but yeah, it's just something to take care of.
I think with a slightly better representation on the map, it might become easier to see. The thing is, I'm not entirely sure. Like this is kind of what I would expect.
Yeah.
But
It's fine. I just feel like I'm being forced to see something that is not necessarily there, but I just need to be careful. And
no,
that's
that's true. Like I checked within the actual data output that I got, and just looked at these two periods next to each other, and like all the East African stuff does like this, and then all the West does like this.
Okay.
So it's in the actual data. It's just a number.
Yeah, no, I understand, but yeah, I just wanted to highlight
No,
it, that
no,
people didn't look like blindly as I did.
No,
as well.
I completely agree, and I actually checked that it's really doing
Cool, all good. Yeah,
opposite things and not the same.
yeah, but I guess within the like 1 hour, 2 hours that we had to do these things, that's that's the best solution. So yeah, thank you. Okay.
Great. Okay, any comments online? Just contributions.
Hello?
Neil, yeah.
Yeah, just if you were looking for maps rather than points, you could probably have a look at the Paleo PGEM data from that we've published now, which is maps is the sort of base. I mean, it's based on maps rather than points, so it might be easier to get to just plot maps straight out from it.
Yep, great.
Sure.
I think you just get that straight from the Barreto paper, Holden, Edwards et al. Paper.
Cool. Can you post that into the Slack channel, Neil?
Selection. Whoa, no, you're pushing me there.
Or even just send it to me and I can put it in there. So like,
All right, yeah, okay, yeah, do that now.
okay, cool.
I also wanted to say it will be accessible to pastclim in the last couple of days. So we are working together. We have been in contact in the last few weeks trying to make it happen. It's not done yet, but in the next, hopefully, couple of days, we will have the data released through pastclim.
Okay, so that data will then be accessible through the pastclim interface as well. Great. Okay, so that takes us to the end of the thinking about group stuff, which brings us on to thinking about our plans for the special issue and the future of the project. So we had, for those of you that weren't in the room, there's a few of you, we conducted our SWOT analysis, so the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of the project so far. And I know Manu is keen to talk about explain his SWOT analysis. Okay, so we can go through that. I did put photos of those in the Slack channel, but maybe Neil isn't seeing that because otherwise it's a bit difficult for us to show that on the screen. Yeah. So yes, okay, I shall put it on the screen of that computer. Yes, right. You go over there, I'll put it on the screen. Actually, I can just do it. Okay.
Let me do it. I can just do it. Yeah, I'm doing it. So yeah, so Brian. So yeah, so just the result of our group. So of the few things that we really enjoyed, like the S, what was the S? Strengths, the strengths of the project. We really like that at the beginning, the hub approach that was developed, like to put people from within the region together. It's a high school here. We also really like how constructive all the discussions had been, all the like putting people with very different backgrounds and knowledge together, and this group and community has always been like very supportive towards itself, so that we really enjoyed that. Yeah, the seminar series, very good job bringing a lot of very interesting science on what was the frequency? Every 2 months? We couldn't agree on how many seminars there were, but we agreed that it was very interesting and really, really nice. And yeah, so I also had like a point on like oh, the thing is gone. But yeah, enjoying like the integration between Africa-based researchers and researchers based outside of Africa. So going back to the like a hub approach and the positive relationships, that was like really a nice community to work with. And finally, many of us really enjoyed discovering or getting access to these two simulations through pastclim. and Will is sitting on the floor. So, so yeah, just getting access to these two simulation sets was really interesting for many researchers, seeing the potential of having access to all of that. Should I go through all the categories, or do you? It's the mouse, I think. Sure. Do you want to do strengths, or I just go to my just go to the categories. So the weaknesses. Some of us found the workshop was too short. They wanted more of the mapping ancient Africa workshop. It was not too long, if that's how we interpreted it. It was too short. We also agreed that, and we put that under weakness, but it's more like opportunity. In fact, just open, like broadening the discussions on the type of proxies that are being used to understand past environment changes. So pollen is a great resource, and we all love pollen, but there's also a lot of other stuff that in phase 2 and later would be good to try to bring people that are not pollen focused and bring more stuff while keeping palynologists on board. We love that. Yeah, one of the weaknesses, and that's like there was a lack of West and North African researchers, not by an absence of trying. I know we'll try to contact quite a few people, especially for the seminars and probably for other stuff as well. So not a complete success on that front, but definitely something to work towards. What did we mean by that point? That sounds really do you remember what lack of proactive instructions? Yes, I do. It's not that bad.
What we were getting at there, which we bring up a little bit later, an opportunity, is the seminars were all about talking about our research data, talking about what we're doing. It was one person's research approach, as opposed to having more seminars, which would be more towards kind of capacitating and being more proactive, rather than just having meetings about this is what our research was about, but having ones about helping us with publishing, or helping us with analysis, or helping us when new data sets came out. And we just felt that that would be a little bit more proactive in the way that we were using this series. So rather than it just be reporting about what I was doing, it was having the opportunity to talk about, I don't know, about a special issue coming up that you can maybe use, or about an opportunity to publish here, or an opportunity to find funding there, or to help emerging academics do grant writing. Just, it was those kinds of things. So using that seminar series and taking it further forward, and just widening what we were using the series for, I think.
This sounds very different from lack of proactive instructions, but yeah. And yeah, the last one we had is like, yeah, there was that much archaeology involved in the past 4 years, and it would be good to try to connect a bit more to that front. But again, weakness is a really strong word for that. It's more like things to look forward to in the future. So if we go to the opportunities, I think we're just going to go over the same points, but yeah, longer workshops. So we'll get us this very nice place all over the world and invite everybody for more than 2 days. or whoever will follow. Yeah, so again, like we're just like basically going over all the weaknesses. So more diverse proxies, try to bring more participants, especially we talked about targeting specifically the French-speaking parts of Africa, which some efforts were done towards that, with having like one seminar in French, trying to bring that community on board with the MAA. Obviously, something that to be thought about for the future, organizing this workshop, so similar workshops in Africa, which would also facilitate like the access to visas and things like that. So more people being able to join. Yeah, we thought of, we talked about the paleoecology of Africa.
Hi.
Yes.
Oh, all right.
Oh. I did not see that coming. So yes, so the paleoecology of Africa, trying to do more without resource, which is like a very long-standing resource that we have in the continent, and maybe try to make it more alive and more of a doing more with it, because that's a great great place to put our work. Something that Trevor mentioned, like maybe alternating like the seminar series with more like online training as well. I think that's already on the list, but like just maybe like alternating like one-time seminar, another one skills workshop. And we also had something about that we wanted to, yeah, that the last point, which we call like open mic sessions, but it could be like creating online environments similar to what we've been doing in the past 2 days, but just creating the place for people to come and chat with a vaguely defined agenda, but not a specific point. Like I'm presenting my research. It's more like, I have been doing this, I might have some problems. Is there anybody in the room with, you know, ideas on how to resolve a problem or things like that? I think it could be quite useful. And it would really also like engage like the different communities and the different participants of this group to work together. So that could be like really interesting thing to balance. So the seminars, training, and these open mic sessions. Something that I think could be like an easy output for this group. It's also like maybe like some form of summary, like what do you call the cheat sheet of you know, paleo data modeling. They're just like summarizing in one place, like all the tools that are accessible and usable by the community, where to find simulation data, or like just very simple document. It's okay. Just some kind of document that people could just look at, and you know, for instance, like archaeologists don't really know much about like pollen data and simulation. They could just go there and see what's out there and refine their ideas of what's available. So I think that would be quite cool and something that this group can easily produce without too much efforts. And obviously something that would be great would be to also connect with like the regional associations, SASQA, IAQA, and maybe the other ones if they're either dormant or non-existent, but just trying to be more connected with the regional associations. That would be quite useful. Yeah, oh yeah, and something like Trevor mentioned as well is like maybe not just African societies, but maybe connecting like on the, not necessarily like collaborating, but like we mentioned like the Australians, like the Aqua, just being aware of what each community is doing. And because he said like he's seen like lots of research they are doing, and there's a lot of overlap between like the questions, the proxies, everything they're doing. They're the similar problematics that we have. So there could be like possibilities of sharing information and knowledge and tools and etc. just to do stuff. And I guess that is it. Yeah, well, expand funding opportunities. We all want that, don't we? Yeah. And yeah, so then going further to the threats. So the potential problems we identified for the future of this group. Obviously, we were wondering like what's happening in the next phase, if there's a next phase. I guess that's the topic of the next session or whatever. So won't expand too much on that. Yeah, so in Africa is always like traveling, mobility, bringing many people together in the same room, whether in Europe or in other places, but it's always a problem. Lack of research facilities in Africa, it's obviously a problem for some things, not necessarily for this community, but for some researchers. And I think we talked about, for instance, Alfred, quest for a microscope, like something as simple as that, and the difficulty that we're not necessarily always thinking about, and it's just like something that simple. How can a group like that help people like Alfred with very basic problem to conduct their research? And what is succession? Succession? Okay, so it goes with the leadership thing. So yeah, so that's what's happening next in the next phase of the Mapping Ancient Africa project. And that's about it. Did I forget anything important? Some ideas, thoughts? Okay.
Great. Thank you.
So not as bad as we wrote on the board.
Okay. Hello. See, finish me off. Okay, hopefully people can just about see that online. So our group, we had a similar set of points. I think the sort of key strengths was like the diversity of the community in terms of where we're from. So acknowledging that there's some regions that are underrepresented, but we have a pretty broad network across Africa and working in and people representing from that. And also in terms of diversity of expertise, we do have archaeologists engaged, we do have modelers engaged, we do have lots of palynologists, which is of course the underpinning strength of anything, society, civilization. We have established a network. Like 3-4 years ago, this network didn't exist. Those connections didn't exist. So I think that's important. We have important people like Manu, like engaged with this, who can hopefully help promote us and keep us funded. And I think one of the other things is because we are a very broad group, we do have access to a lot of different pots of money. Like there are different national, international funding routes that we can look at. I mean, I'm not saying there's lots of them, but there are at least different opportunities. So if people do see opportunities that they think, wasn't that bad a suggestion? Then we can go after those, and we have the skills and the expertise in writing grants, in writing opportunities, and I think we can use this network to help build those things. So that's a good. In terms of weaknesses, I think there is, like, although we have this big network, was like the thought was we hadn't all been working together yet, and I think that's where this 2 days has really started that process. Like we've now got little projects where groups of people are starting to come together, address questions, new skills, and those things. So I think that has been a weakness in the past. It's been very much like, okay, let's build this network, but now this is kind of phase 2. And if we're writing another application to Inqua or wherever, I think that's something we can say, okay, we've done this, we've built this network, but what are we going to do with it? Talked about underrepresentations. We've identified data gaps as well as research gaps across there, and the limits on funding. And I think a big weakness / threat is that travel visa issue that you guys brought up. I mean, it's very frustrating, and there's at least 5 people who couldn't be here because of exclusion because they didn't get visas to travel, and that's just sad. So. In terms of the opportunities, we have the Quaternary International opportunity. We can get papers into there. We want to be able to support people. That's a real opportunity that we can deliver this. We can help edit, develop, think about how to produce papers. People with more experience, less experience in this room can really hopefully come together to have a really nice special issue that draws together on a number of different themes. And through that, we can help to develop a range of scientists from different locations and different careers. So I think this is a real nice opportunity to be able to support different people. I think we want to have more physical meetings. I think that it's nice to be in the room together. Like yesterday, today has been super fun. So the more we can do that, the better. We thought about, like, there are other regional African organizations. Brian's committed to giving another AFQA meeting, I believe. That's what he said. You don't need to comment. Just don't need to reaffirm that. I'm just putting that out there, recording it. And he's smiling and nodding. And so we can commit to that, and we can piggyback mapping ancient Africa stuff off major events like that. And I think that's important, like we're here for the INQA meeting in Rome. I think it is important that the next meeting we have is in Africa to aid with the travel issues and getting people there. We also looked at potentially into sort of another route of funding or opportunities for people is through educational schemes, the Erasmus Mundi scheme, and how do we use these sort of linkages for capacity building and for educational enhancement of people, I think is important. The other thing we thought about for the both enhancing that online environment, we thought, yeah, about writing workshops, both online or physical. We've got this special issue to develop, and we'll talk a little bit about how we're doing that, but maybe a writing workshop or a series of online writing activities might be really helpful to people in preparing for that. In terms of the threat, if we're not, is disengagement. We have a big network of people. How do we stop people dropping off? How do we keep encouraging people to be involved? How do we be beneficial to those? That's a thing. How do we integrate different approaches? Like archaeological maps and time series data are quite different to these paleoclimate maps that we're generating. How do we get those types of data sets onto the same page? And I think that's a big threat of those disciplinary differences, if you like. And also data piracy, like if we're putting all our stuff out there and we want to make sure that people get credit for what they're doing and that the sort of data that we put out there, and this is a bigger problem than we can deal with, but making sure that we have a good procedure and a process within this group to think about that. Anything else? Yes.
Just when you mentioned about like a funding option, something I forgot, because INQA has that like kind of skill enhancement funding option. So like, you know, for summer schools or stuff like that. So there's a tiny bucket of money there that could be tapped into. You know, you talked a lot about maybe like helping people to write papers, like teaching them how to do that. I think that would fit pretty nicely, or stuff that we did in the past 2 days would also fit like that. So it's one option to consider, maybe like, you know, to apply for that, going to another congress or something like that. It would help bring people over. And I don't think that's too hard to get.
Good to know. Okay, any other thoughts on this or comments? People in the room or online?
Oh,
yep, go for it.
Yeah, you just mentioned the difficulty of getting different kinds of data sets together. I just wondered whether if it verges onto really interdisciplinary things with historical and archaeological stuff, you could contemplate integrating or linking to the SESHAT database, which is Peter Turkin and that crowd's big historical socio-cultural data set, which also has climate stuff in it, which is a global thing.
I'm not familiar with that. What sort of time period does that cover?
As far back as they can get, really. So that mostly anywhere where there's data from human civilization. So, you know, 10.
Okay.
It's on the last 10K, I guess, but.
Yeah, definitely, and maybe getting some of those people involved or giving a presentation on what that is might be quite nice, just so people can learn about that. Might be quite interesting. Cool, good suggestion. Anything else? Okay, I suggest we take a 5-minute break, and then we think about Quaternary International and the next steps of that. Yep. Sound good? So because I need to pee. So we're just gonna have a short break, and that's it. Gemma, there's a question. One more question online. Ali.
Yes, thank you. Just over the chat, the observation that was raised. I think also, why not also think of giving rules to different people or grouping people and ascertaining some roles to for them to accomplish. I think that will also help in making, because I'm reacting to this lack of is it proactiveness. So to get people to be more proactive, maybe they have a certain task that they are to accomplish over a certain period, and that will be assessed over time, will also help. Thank you.
So thank you. So talking about different roles of defining roles for people within the organization. Yeah, that's definitely an opportunity. We could have more defined things that different people do. That would definitely, yeah, come as a potential opportunity for us to think about going forward. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, great suggestion. I'll add it to our list of opportunities. Anything else? No, great. So comfort break, and grab a coffee if you like, and or whatever, and then we'll be back. And Stephanie, you're going to talk about QI and what the outline plan is and how many papers you have lined up and all that stuff. She looks very relaxed there. She looks like a coiled spring ready to explode. Boing. Okay, shall we reconvene? Reconvening. And then we can get to the Botanic Gardens and the drinks before midnight. It's only an hour's hike across the sweltering hot city of Rome. Okay, Stephanie, if you can use that microphone, they'll be able to see you on the thingy. I think.
All right, everyone. I had the opportunity through the day to talk to some of the people that are interested in putting something up for the special issue. I'm afraid I didn't manage to go around to everyone yet, so I like to use the rest of the Congress to talk to everyone who's interested in. I do it piece by piece. I just want to give it enough time when talking about the papers that you want to do and stuff. So I'm trying not to rush this so much. So from the stuff I have looked so far, there's great potential, great opportunities. Several papers in total I have, if I include Will and myself, because we have to. We are looking at somewhere in the range of 5 to 6 papers that are there as a potential, which would basically align to about half of the special issue, which I find very promising, and it's really getting us in the right direction. From a topic point of view, they are for most part either very pollen heavy or palynology heavy, which considering the group outline here today is obvious, but also a lot of has been really, I think, I don't know, like put in a new vision in terms of using CREST and in terms of particularly using pastclim. So that has really given new views and opportunities to people, a new tool to really use, and that has inspired a lot of work that might be like in terms of adding it to an existing outline, or as a group around Trevor, basically trying to make this into something completely out of that. So it's quite nice. Some of it is at an idea stage. Others is much more developed with drafts in existence, like quite a bit of textual stuff already done. So we're a little bit on both ends of the scale, really, in terms of where we are with the paper. So we have to see. For the most part, the stuff that needs to be done for those I've talked to is trying to get particularly the model stuff running, which is a challenge for those that have no experience with it. So that's something that as a group, we might be able to provide some help with during the Congress. So by the time people leave here, and if they really want to use like CREST or pastclim, that we maybe get them there, that they can then run it to help themselves moving on. And there's, like, from my point of view, there's still a lot of questions I have that I play around with, but it would be good to have that opportunity. But overall, I think it's shaping up all right. And we keep our eyes and ears open for everyone who wants to join. And I really like the opportunity for the rest of the session, the week, to go through everybody I haven't spoken to yet, to see what they might be willing to contribute to. So that also goes for the online folks. If you want to contribute to the session, to the special issue, you're most welcome. Please get in touch to see what you would like to do, where you are at the moment, how we as a community can help you process the paper to get it in shape, which gets to the last point, what is the outline of this? So we've kind of agreed that we would like to open the special issue for submission in roughly a year from now. So July 2024 is when the paper should be submitted. We have a 3-month window to do so. This is a stipulation by QI, that we have a 3-month window for everything to go in there before the special issue submission is closed, and then it's a review process and stuff. So we can always try to negotiate with the journal, but this is what the information I have now. So what we want to do in order to help people along is that we like to have a first draft to go into the special issue around Christmas or roughly the end of the year. So this is the first kind of deadline we're trying to put out. And we would like people to work towards this point to having a draft ready. I'm gonna do, latest in October, do like an online workshop thingy, trying to coordinate with everybody who's interested in the special issue and with some of the other editors to see where people are with the publication, what problems they have run into within the last couple of weeks, how can we fix the issues, how can we move stuff along, where are the issues that they have identified so they can keep an end of the year deadline for a draft. So, and then for next year in spring, we're aiming to have a writing workshop, hopefully organized hopefully in Africa, so we don't have the travel visa issues we have right now, and trying to really focus on hammering the papers in shape to really get to a submission in summer next year. So that's kind of like the outline we have for now to get 2 submissions. So the deadlines you should keep in mind if you need really help and if you need trouble, latest by October, let us know. Really get in touch, let us know that you're struggling for whatever reason, so we can try to really proactively get to it, look at it, discuss, really helping you with it. The next deadline is end of the year to have a draft, so we can really look at what your idea is, what the discussion is, where you want to take your data. And then based on the status at this point, we have a much clearer view if we're going to be able to hold the deadlines we want to do. In the meantime, with the number of papers we're getting together and the different themes, after CREST done, I'm going to go to the journal and I'm going to try to hammer out a few of the details of the special issues that we are currently not entirely sure, like will the papers that are accepted immediately put online, or is everything going to wait for the slowest paper in the queue? How are we going to do with open access charters and a whole bunch of other issues that have arisen, like the window for submission, whether or not it's going to stay only 3 months and stuff like that. So we know what the real room is and give you as much transparent information about the special issue as we can. But if you have questions in the meantime, at any point, get in touch with me as a managing editor or with any of the other editors to just raise a question, ask. Let us know if you're struggling, if you have problems, if you have questions, just let us know. So that, I think, is covering most information for now.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, what I would say is like, if you have a draft that's ready to be looked at by the editors, send it through. Like, start that conversation, start that process. So it doesn't hurt to be ready ahead of time. So we're very happy to talk to people and to do that at any point from now. Any questions or comments on that plan? No, everyone's on board. That's good. I like it. So Michaela's written her paper. That's all good. So we're all sorted. We have a thing on the chat, I think. Let me have a look on the chat and see what this is saying. Great. I like great. That's good. Thank you. Okay. Okay, which brings us to the final item that we have here, which is really the plan for the future of the Mapping Ancient Africa project. I think what's become clear over the last 24, 48 hours is that that we need to keep going. There is a willingness to keep going, and Stephanie alluded to the idea of a writing workshop early next year. Now, whether we apply for that through Inqua training funding or through the multi-year project funding as something additional, we'd have to think about as we go into this next phase of the project. The sort of, we've built this network, but what do we actually do with it? How do we get people working together? I think it might be useful if someone other than myself was leading that, and so I'm very happy to remain involved and very happy to continue to support, to run online sessions and stuff. We have the technology to do that very easily from Amsterdam, and I can put on monthly seminars online or workshops online. That's very happy to do that. I think it would look good for the application process if that moved on to somebody else as a leadership. I think that would be looked on favorably by the PALCOM president and the and Inqua in general. I mean, Inqua are very positive about our thing. But I think if we can show that we're really developing, I think that's also good. So this is kind of over to you guys, and what do you want, and how is it going to happen? There's something in the chat. Okay, well spotted. Yes, I will put the schedule of the publication stuff into the Slack channel. No worries with that. The deadline, I think, for thinking about timescales, the deadline for submitting the Inqua next round of funding is September this year. So, who's going to write it? Just if you pick up.
Since I have, I can do that. But it really depends on who else would like to join, or who else would like to also somehow look at the direction of taking. So I would love to have someone from Africa-based research institution taking the lead on it. So if you have someone who would like to do the role, I would be more than supportive of actually doing that rather than keeping it in Europe.
We should also probably extend that to a larger community.
Yes.
Because it's only a small.
Sure. Completely agreed. It's just that with the deadline coming up in September, and it's you apply on a yearly basis. So one way to look at it is someone within the network now takes over just for the next phase, which gets us to next year and gives us a time to really look for others, to look for the person who takes it on for the next couple of years, to develop it after that. But also if someone like Rahab, if you feel like doing it, by all means, I'm happy to have you take the lead on it.
Yeah, I was thinking that that's possible, but I would love that we could work together. Like we could do this together, and also Lynn, Quick, and Gemma, and anybody else who would want to. But at least we can take lead on that. I can like spearhead on that. Yeah, including Gemma and Lynn. Yeah. Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
I think it's also like really important to extend the invitation, so to not select based on the people who, who could get visas and stuff, like not to continue that bias. So making sure that by email people can nominate other people or self-nominate, and then I don't know how we move forward from that. I don't know if you would get many responses mid-July or end of July for September, but I think it's important to be like as open as possible to try to reach. And then I don't think there's a limit in terms of how many people can be like in the leadership things. I mean, if we have 20 applications, we'll have to select or something, but if it's just like we have like 3-4 names, if we get like two more or something like that, or 3 or whatever, that would be like, I think just a very nice rather than the more people, I guess, are involved, the more activities we can organize, the more things we can do.
The main issue which we had in the original, we were a lot of people on it, but everything had to go through Will, because you cannot split the money between 5 different institutions. So one institution needs to get, so someone has to take the leadership role in that perspective to channel the money. In terms of organization, that's something different. But in terms of infrastructure to channel the money around, that's a different matter. So, and I think whatever people decide, by all means, I think that's something to really keep in mind, that the money will have to go to some place that is doable in terms of paperwork to channel around.
Cheers, thanks. Isn't this an opportunity to do some of the things we've been talking about already under the SWOT, the dreaded SWOT analysis? I mean, leadership and engagement and being proactive and having a succession plan, try to bring this all together. And maybe there's an opportunity to do that, bearing in mind there is this rush, how the money is channeled, also your concern about more people being involved in the process, but also, yeah. And having said that as well, remember, for many of us, we're actually in work at this phase. It's not our long summer vacation. So for many of the African universities, people are actually around at the stage. So I think we can either look at maybe the opportunity where you have a kind of committee, which is seen as a succession, which maybe falls under your leadership over the next couple of months, and use writing the proposal over the next couple of months almost as a successional process. So in other words, getting to know, getting to work together and things like that. Maybe there's also an opportunity, and I think Brian mentioned it, where you've almost got regional people. So you've got somebody from East Africa or somebody from Southern Africa. So you can have more people on a kind of a committee.
Yeah.
What I don't like is when you have 5 leaders, because it never works in academia. It has to go, the money has to, there's Inqua want one responsible person, and they're always going to want that. So you can't come, we're now a collective. That doesn't work. And I know we love doing that. We love trying to spread the load, and we love trying to say, well, everybody's involved. At the end of the day, sod all happens because there's too many people involved at that level. So I'm just thinking aloud here, but I think that maybe having to write the proposal for looking for funding going the next year could be seen as an opportunity to have a group working, putting the proposal together under your leadership or under Will's leadership at that point. And then once that proposal's in and the opportunity for money is there, then calling for having almost a president and a president-elect, or somebody in charge and a regional representation. I'm just trying to find ways forward. And it's an opportunity to open up this committee as well. So that's what I'm thinking through.
Yep.
Yeah, just maybe one thing, September is the deadline, but there's also do we need to be supported for the next year, or can we continue to do stuff online? Or
if we want to have a writing workshop somewhere in Africa next year, we need funds to do that. We will be, after this meeting, we will be spent up. If we want to have a physical activity, which I think came out of this, then we need a plan to do that, and we'll need funds to do that.
Yeah, but if we just apply to the skill enhancement thing, it's less community based. It's more like, we have this plan to organize that writing workshop and doing like that. And, you or Stephanie, you could lead that, but that doesn't say much about the future of the community itself. And we could use just another year to make invite people to participate and stuff like that, and have then that multi-year project set up, use the next year as a kind of a buffer, trying to tap into that skill enhancement thing for the workshop next year, which means there's an official break in the MAA, but it doesn't really matter in itself.
Funding break, not an official break.
Yeah, it's a funding break. Yeah, and the community continues. We do our things online. Just an idea, because September is coming quite soon, and that.
That was one of the kind of thoughts that we had, because the deadline is approaching really fast, and eventually we need to redirect the position that this project is taking. So that's why the idea was to keep it maybe in a somewhat broader frame, but within people who have initiated the project to begin with, just to bridge the gap, just for the gap bridging phase, get the funding for that through whatever scheme, and keep the project alive. And then you can, in terms of succession, hand it over to a different way of developing it. So it's just within the time frame that we have left, it might be easier, since we have the old proposals, to simply reuse what we can, put in the new time frame that we want to do in terms of the writing exercise, and get that out of the door. Because if we now start to enhance the group substantially with people that weren't involved in the initial phase, which is totally fine, and I'm completely up for it, it will just slow down the process a slightly bit more to get the proposal in time. So, but on the other hand, if I remember correctly, the proposal wasn't that extensive. So it would also be fine. So I don't know what the best way. I just thought about the most efficient way to bridge the gap and get to the money so we can use it, do the writing, do physical access, physical meetings, and then move on with the project afterwards.
Okay,
So-
I'm gonna make a proposal. So there are two parts of Inqua funding that are available to us. One is the multi-year project stuff, and one is the training workshop stuff. I suggest that Stephanie and or Rahab take the lead in looking at which is the most sensible route to apply to keep this going. So maybe it's both. I mean, maybe Stephanie can lead the multi-year project and we don't ask for the full 8,000, but we ask for some travel bursaries to get the workshop, and Rahab leads the money to run a writing workshop in Nairobi. And so, and that gets people in Nairobi, and then we use this to fly people in from another thing, and we do that. But I propose that we challenge the two of them to take on the lead of that. We send an email around to the wider group to see if anyone self-nominates or nominates someone to join that leadership group, and to see whether anyone steps up for that. And we just see what comes in, because I think it is good to give that opportunity. And then we look at the details of how and where exactly we do that workshop next year. But I think it would be good to have a physical meeting in the next 12 months to keep the ball rolling. I think and I think the challenge is to get as many people there as possible. So having extra travel funding, if we go for both routes, would not hurt, because it would only just allow us to mobilize more people to get to these events. Do people want to object, suggest an alternative?
Yeah, like I was just saying, like two proposals, we cannot just write the same thing, the same, not exactly the same, but like we're just gonna have that writing workshop in Nairobi, trying to get money from the two parts.
Yeah, I would have
most likely only one of those who would be successful.
Yeah, I mean, the thing would be to see how that would fit together.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I don't know what the limits are on the two, which is bigger, which is smaller.
Me
I have
neither.
no idea. Like, so, but we should just look at, those seem like two obvious routes to go down. Maybe they're complementary, maybe one is better than the other. And so I think we just need to look at that in more detail and make a decision.
I think that makes sense. I'm just deciding like how the leadership things as well, that will more or less tell you which scheme you want to go for. If we have a clear leadership for the next phase, maybe like the multi-year project is the route to go for.
Yeah.
If it's still a bit fuzzy and we didn't get enough answers or stuff like that, the skill enhancement funding would be pretty more reasonable. Or just like that one year project thing as well. That's options. Yeah. Not you. I mean, yes.
Anybody else want to say anything other than Trevor?
Sorry,
Trevor.
I think also with the proposal, tell the truth. We've had this meeting over 2 days, and one of the things that's come up from the SWOT analysis as a weakness is a successional plan and the diversity of the committee. And maybe that should actually go into proposal as something that we work on in the next year.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Let's be honest about it. It's come up. We haven't got it right. Let's get it right. And I think that should actually form part of the proposal. Yeah.
Oop, don't die. Okay. Any other final thoughts or questions or contributions, either online or in the room? In which case, I think that the remaining thing for me to remind you is, which I know you all know, is on the 19th of July, somewhere in the city of Rome. Maybe here, no, not here. So we will have our session. Many of you are speaking there, having posters there. I'm excited to do that. We will meet up with more Africanist researchers. So I look forward to seeing you there and around the Congress. Thank you all for your participation. And yeah, thank you very much. That's the end. Yeah. Okay. Thank you all online. Tot ziens. Ja. Tot ziens.
Thanks, everyone.